oh no, I'm in the delivery room and I know nothing about a baby. A lot of people on YouTube are right on the brink of having their child, or they just found out they are pregnant. Yeah, well, men have a tendency to search for help after it's too late.
Zucchinis? Give me the paper. Nice.
I love you, Texas.
Hey guys, I'm Young, a full-time dad and a full-time professional with the goal to become the best parent possible. The Girl Dad Show is my journey interviewing fellow working parents aspiring to be both good at work and parenting. I'm going to do this by gathering and sharing unfiltered perspectives from my guests. So join me as I research parenthood one interview at a time.
Jason, thank you so much for joining me on the Girl Dad Show today.
Hey, it's good to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I know. We've been talking back and forth via electronic email and everything else, but yeah, it's good to finally talk with you.
It is, yeah. I can't wait to unpack everything that you're working on. So let's just jump right into it. Why don't you tell the listeners what you do?
So Dad University, I started a couple of years ago. In the beginnings, it was just a podcast and me learning how to be a dad and how to help, anyone I can. And as it evolved, as I became more experienced, as I learned more, talked with more people, I decided to do video. And that, just broadened my audience and who was listening, and then also created a course and now have multiple courses and creating a membership. And so there's all kinds of activities going on, but the gist of Dad University is to just help dads go from sort of chaos and confused to a confident parent.
It's awesome. And I'm so excited to talk to you about it. But I want to know first and foremost, why did you start it? Like, what was that driving factor that made you go, I need to do this?
It was my own pain. My kids were maybe 1 and 3. My mother had passed away, and she was a huge influence in my life. And also, she was an author and seminar speaker in personal relationships.
Oh, wow.
So I grew up in sort of this self-help environment, you can call it, where we'd sort of analyze and talk about emotions and such. And I had great parents, but I found myself not really knowing how to parent. And my wife had suggested a parenting class that was offered through my son's preschool, and she went through it. And, my first reaction is like, I'm not going to a parenting class. Like, I had great parents. Like, why? I'm good.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're arguing. I'm stressed out. I don't know how to deal with the kids. I had no experience with children. And, I just was kind of navigating it like anybody else, just doing what you think is the best. If you had horrible parents and you did what they didn't do, and if you had great parents, you're like, well, what did my parents do in this situation? You know? So I started just sort of evolving, and that was it. It was like kind of from my own pain and looking at my own journey and saying, it's gotta be better than this.
Yeah.
Like I love my kids, but I'm not enjoying this. I'm stressing out. I'm not knowing how to handle situations, and I just needed something to change.
So it was really personal. It's like, hey, you're doing this for yourself, and then that ended up becoming your business.
Yeah, very, very personal. And I just went on a journey of, I would say call it healing, but I was healing from my mother's passing for sure, going through grief counseling and that. And I kind of started with the idea of being able to help myself. And then if I can help people as I learn, that's going to be the journey. So I try to stick with what I've experienced and what I've known. I get a lot of questions about things I have no idea about.
Yeah.
If you, kind of proclaim yourself as an expert, people think you're an expert at everything. And by no means am I an expert at everything. I'm only an expert of what I've gone through. And even then it can be questionable. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's kind of how you actually, explain the product as well too, right? Like what you're delivering, like you're just basically sharing your dad experience.
Yeah, especially the courses too. So I make a lot of videos. I have hundreds of YouTube videos, and that's kind of where my success has been the most. And so from those I've created courses, and it's really all of the topics and the information that I wish I had,
right?
That I've learned and gone through and such. And so it's taking input from myself and my own experience to others that I've talked with, and hundreds of podcast episodes as well. And it's collectively we have similar problems.
It's so crazy that that you fell upon this and you have such a quantity of content out there, because I think that the reality is that you still have such a great business opportunity to tackle even more market. Because like I will say that I think the shared feedback that I get from most dads is that there's not enough information for dads specifically.
Well, and I'm a search expert by my career. And so, when I started looking and saying, I don't think there's a lot of dads looking for this stuff.
Yeah.
But the dads who are really looking, hopefully they're finding me.
Yeah.
And so, that I do look at that. If we certainly go into the business aspect, I look at what are people searching for? What are the questions that people have in combination with what is the information that I want to teach or I want to, get out there. But what I want to get out there is not always what people find interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's something stereotypical about dads that don't necessarily want to search for that or ask for help, right? Like that's kind of, I guess, the point I'm trying to say is that like I never even knew to search for it. I mean, but now that I'm talking to you in this position that I'm in right now, interviewing you, I'm like, I probably could have used the help and probably even just the community of it, right?
Well, men have a tendency to search for help after it's too late.
Yeah.
That's the best way. Hey, I'm on the verge of divorce. Maybe I should look into marriage counseling.
Yeah.
Or, hey, my tooth hurts. Now I'll go to the dentist. It's not, people aren't doing preventative, especially men are not doing preventative, activities. And so, same thing with their children. A lot of people on YouTube are right on the brink of having their child, or they just found out they are pregnant. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of, in the chaos mode, a lot of them. It's not, hey, we're having trouble eating, at toddler at dinner time. Maybe I could go to YouTube and find some tips. Like that is happening, but the quantity of that is so much lower than, oh no, I'm in the delivery room and I know nothing about a baby. I get a lot of that.
That's very interesting. And then, I mean, I'm going to jump a little bit here, but you alluded to your mom being in kind of the therapy and kind of emotional understanding of yourself space.
Yeah.
What about your father? Was he an entrepreneur?
My father worked as a computer sales guy for 20 something years, probably even more than that.
Oh, wow.
And then ended up, so when I got out of graduate school, I ended up going and working with my mother. So I date myself now, but like 97, I was building websites and doing e-commerce and such. And so, it was great times back then. And so I learned internet marketing, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And so was looking at search engine optimization, all of that back then. And so, my mother's business, I can say I was even involved in that when I was a kid. I mean, I would come home from school, put her like cassette tapes and flyers in envelopes, and then, staple them together. And then she'd pay me $0.25 for, each one that I put together. I was her fulfillment center.
Wow.
Because she was doing, television and radio infomercials.
Wow.
She was the best, New York Times bestselling author. So she was very, very successful, all in the world of relationships. And I just, so that was kind of my intro into, call it seeking, or looking to improve things.
But also entrepreneurship, it sounds like. She
was a big time entrepreneur versus, my dad had the stable,
that's right,
computer job for forever. But where I was going was I got involved in her business. And then after years of me then going out and doing things on my own, my father stepped in. He retired from his job and then stepped in and took over that business. So,
whoa, wait, so your dad took over your mom's business?
Yeah, I mean, basically, so my mother was ill for a long time, and so her capabilities of like going out and doing speaking, or it was very, very limited. And so she battled cancer for 20 something years, off and on, and such. And so my father, in addition to being a caretaker, was, hey, I got to fulfill this, send out books, answer phone calls, do consultations. I mean, my father was good at it too.
Yeah.
And so he ran that for quite a ways, and until he developed dementia, and we're dealing with that now.
Yeah.
and so he for many, many years took over the business and was running that. And, you know, it just kind of scaled back.
Yeah.
He was just making sure things were being done. They weren't growing in any way. And I knew I wanted to break out. And so I ended up doing my own things at that point. So, pretty entrepreneur life. I mean, that my entire career has been entrepreneurial. So
Yeah. Well, it's also fun that you started your entrepreneurial career doing search engine optimization and marketing, especially if you're talking about early 2000s, because I mean that's like
we're talking late 1990s.
late 1990s, yeah. Because I'm almost positive, like I think I bought my first commercial like accessible Wi-Fi router in '98. Right, I think that's like when it was like first available. It was like $400 or $500.
Oh, well, like a T1 line. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we were still dealing with dial-up, and
Oh yeah,
yeah, I would look at, you know, Netscape, and the thing would take forever to load.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you would
yeah.
sit there for a while.
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh, that's amazing. How
Yeah.
the landscape has changed tremendously, I'm assuming, right? Like just based on the fact that you've kind of been working at this from the
Are you
infancy.
talking about with optimization?
Yeah.
Well, here's what's funny.
Yeah.
It really has.
Oh gosh,
You know,
that is
there-
really funny.
I mean, there are tips and tricks that we used to do that, of course, aren't able. You're not able to do that anymore. It has certainly become harder and harder and harder to optimize things. But back then, the whole thing was content is king. You know, and that is still the same today. I mean, people searching for the content, it has to be good content. You know, keyword nuances, link building, you know, the social validity and domain authority, like there's all these things, but for the most part, it's still fundamentally the same.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you got to
Conceptually,
put out
yeah.
good quality.
Yeah.
You know, we were able to put out, you know, bad quality for a while, but you know, you've got to sort of know what you're doing. You know?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's kind of good and bad to hear, actually. Like, so then you're basically coupling your personal goals and your kind of stage in life, and then you kind of mirror. It sounds like you kind of mirrored your mom's journey a little bit to a certain degree, and kind of making it your own.
Yeah, I have always been entrepreneurial. I was doing internet marketing, and you know, I enjoy it.
Right.
I stumbled upon this dad world, and really what it was an outlet at first.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't.
It's like
I
therapy.
didn't think of this as I didn't think of this as a business, or that I was going to be able to supplement income or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I just really, you know what, I could help dads. And the part I kind of missed a little bit was I was going through grief counseling for my mother's passing, and there was an all men's grief group. And the leader of that group, Jim, who is just the most wonderful man, convinced me, because I had this idea of talking with other dads. He said, why don't you just set up a group and talk with other dads?
Yeah.
And so I've had him on my podcast, and he was really instrumental in sort of convincing me that maybe there is something where I could help other dads. Because I said, you know, gosh, I've learned so much going through this process. He said, well, why don't you just set up a meetup group or something? And so that's kind of how the whole thing started.
Wow.
Was I set up a local meetup group for dads, and I would have, you know, one dad show up, I'd have 10 dads show up, and then I'd have 0 dads show up. I mean, you know, and I just stuck with it. And then, yeah, and for me, it was great, and I enjoyed it. I even, like, at one point got a sponsor, like the person who was giving us an office space, like, also gave us a food allowance. And,
Wow.
you know, I was having a good time helping these guys and helping myself.
Yeah.
You know, and being able to kind of come to this group therapy. And it was just guys talking confidentially. And yeah, that was the impetus for it. And then it evolved and just kept going.
Do you remember the exact moment that like it turned into a business, or was it just gradual, organic?
It was very gradual. I mean, I'd say it's still gradual because I'm evolving this all the time. I mean, it's, you know, when I started like bringing in revenue from YouTube videos, I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
like I just got a check.
Yeah.
Like I did not expect, you know, it was like a $50 check or something,
yeah.
which at the, you know, in the beginning, I'm like, wow, people are watching this, you know? And so that evolved. And then, you know, I start getting inquiries for sponsors and stuff, which I've been very, very hesitant. The revenue, a lot of it has been from my course. You know, I've done some sponsorships, and then now I'm embarking on a membership. And so that's really where I think the business will go kind of to the next level. And I've just been buried in that for a while now.
Oh, developing this new product line.
Developing it.
Yeah.
And we had sort of talked offline about having help and assistance. And
Yeah.
I've been looking for that. And it's very hard to do everything on your own. So
It really is. So, and then we can continue that conversation because I was actually really curious about it, but I wanted to get recording, So, but
yeah.
how are you thinking about this business then? So, are you like thinking about it as like you need to figure out a way to start? Are you in the awkward phase where you need to start outsourcing some of the work because you can't do it all yourself, and like just like the workload has gotten big, or your goals are bigger, or
Yeah, I don't know if I think of it like that. I think for me, the way that I can articulate it is like, for me, this is a 15-year plan.
oh,
You know,
interesting.
I think of this business as building my legacy. That's really what this is for me is, how am I going to impact the world, and in what way, can I do
Ah,
that, and how big can I do
I
that?
love
So
it.
if I happen to make money along the way, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It has never been the goal since the beginning, and I've always wanted to maintain that that's the goal. So I've always been hesitant about sponsors and things, and kind of the integrity of what I'm doing. But sponsors and money and that kind of thing can help bring this to more people. So yeah, that's kind of been the thing, is I've looked at this as maybe a 15-year plan, with not an exit or anything, but just, this is going for me to build up this like sort of, arsenal of content, and, in doing that. And that's through videos and courses, and, eventually if we get back to live events or speaking and doing things, there's a lot of different things that I can do. But it's just reaching as many people as possible and bringing them into some kind of community is really the goal.
Mhm.
If I can figure out that what is the goal, it's it'd be really cool to, have thousands of people say I'm part of Dad University,
Yeah.
whatever that means,
Yeah.
um, whether they are a member, or they're on my email, or they're subscribed, or, whatever that is, they're actively part of the university. And so that's the goal.
That's awesome. I also like that you've clearly outlined that. It sounds like you're a very, very astute entrepreneur, because I think that that's the key thing to being successful as an entrepreneur, is like really figuring out the end in mind is, and being very, very specific
Yeah.
about that. The second thing I love about the goal is that it has almost nothing to do with money. So anything that you make from it is just a nice to have. And I've also
Right.
heard from a lot of people that, that's really, really important, because if you don't articulate like, hey, what is the amount that you're looking for, then you're never going to think that it's enough. Like there's like this an emotional thing, right? So that's
Yeah.
really, really cool.
Yeah, I've been successful as a consultant, and I still maintain a couple consulting clients, which, essentially I could always do that.
Right.
But when you spend, 80 to 75% of your time on something that isn't supporting you, now it's getting where it's coming in, but for so long, there was nothing,
Yeah.
and I was working late nights, and it didn't matter though, because when, as an entrepreneur, if you're not passionate about
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like work when you're passionate,
Yeah.
and my wife is very supportive. My children are supportive.
Yeah.
And so, having that around me is, everyone sort of loves that I'm doing this, if you will. It's, it's for the better good of society. So, I love marketing, but, helping a company make tens of millions of dollars is great.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing as getting one email from some guy that, the video impacted his life, and now he's spending more time with his child.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't even equal.
Tell me about your kids, actually. So you said you had two, right? With 2 years apart. I think you said that earlier.
Yeah, I have two. I have a 11-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son.
Nice.
And I'll say the caveat is I keep them off of, it's interesting because I've been criticized a little bit with, well, why don't you show your kids? And I actually did one interview with my son and one with my daughter on my podcast, many, many years ago. Right. But for privacy and everything else that I have some pretty strong beliefs in that, until they make those decisions on their own, I've kind of left them out of the spotlight, if you will. And so, they've kind of been in the background, and same with my wife. And it's like, that's their deal. And so, yeah, it's been interesting to navigate that too, is, you know, being a strong father figure and you know, and call it an influencer without showing your children.
Yeah, and then is that more just to like make sure that you're not sharing what you know what they might not want to be shared as they're you know they can't articulate that yet because they're younger, or is that because
Yeah, well, it's a combination of many
yeah,
things. You know, I've done a topic called
mm-hmm,
Sharrington, or you know, to oversharing, or Sharrington. I think I'm saying it right, with parenting and
mm-hmm,
sharing, and basically, you know, I just don't believe in a lot of what the platforms are for and what they do for people and how they do it. I think there are some great use cases, but there's a lot of negative that can come with that. And so whether it is privacy, whether it is, I just not concerned with people seeing my
yeah,
kids score a soccer goal. You know, I just
yeah,
like, you know, maybe my
mm-hmm,
family, and a lot of people do that. They share it with their family and share it with, you know, but yeah, I mean, if you know, if it's really, really important, then I share it with my two sisters, my dad, and his wife. Like that's,
yeah.
you know, like that's about the extent of me sharing pictures with people and experiences, if you will, of my life.
Yeah,
So
that's so interesting, especially as someone that's like literally creating content in the space. Yeah, I can see how that's a
right,
an interesting polarity that you get from some
yeah,
of
I
the.
got pretty strong views on it. The social. It hasn't created a tremendous amount of value
Yeah,
personally, you know, certainly business wise. So I'm hesitant to see the value too much,
yeah,
you know, or maybe there's more negative than positive,
yeah. But I
you
think
know.
that it's even beyond just like the pros and cons of it. It sounds like you've already made up your mind what you want to do and not want to do, and so
I mean, yeah, for other people, you know, I'm not criticizing. It's like that's everyone gets to do what they want to
yeah,
do, and so, you know, but just for me and my family, that's been
yeah.
the case.
Can I ask what your kids think that you do for a living? Have you talked to them about like both the
Yeah, no, they are very clear about it. I mean, they like I said, that, you know, even coming on the podcast once or twice, they really appreciate it.
hmm
You know, the idea that I'm helping other people. You know, they love that I have subscribers on YouTube. I mean, it's you know, you have 50,000, Dad.
yeah,
You know, I mean, they used to come to me and say like, you know, well, how many are you at
yeah,
now?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, how many subscribers do you have? You know, because the people that they're watching have
yeah,
millions. Um, but yeah, no, they appreciate it. I think, you know, or at least I would hope they appreciate more of the content
hmm
of it and my ability to, you know, practice what I
right,
preach. You know, that's the biggest thing. And you know, parenting is not perfect.
yeah,
You know, it happens. The stuff happens all the time where, you know, I even get called out on stuff where my kids will say something and be like, "Hey, Dad, that's not what you know, that's not what you were saying." You know, and so and they'll call me out on it. So their emotional intelligence is pretty
hmm
high. You know, being submersed in this
yeah.
stuff. You know, even for their age.
That's
So
awesome. That's really cool, and it sounds like you have a really good conversation with them about the work that you do. And do they understand like that you also do consulting for SEO and also do this? Like, do they understand the time split and?
yeah, maybe. You know, I don't talk too much about
Mm,
it. You know, if they have questions and such, I'll answer. But yeah, I mean, you know, they know that if they're looking for something that I can help a company, you know,
yeah.
I can help a company do it. But I think more so is the dad university stuff. You know, they've asked, okay, oh, can I get a shirt, or you know, can I get a hat or something? I mean, they're, you know, they're proud of it. They like the fact that they do it.
Yeah, that's great. So I think I got a good gist of like how you're thinking about, success in your dad university business and how you're wanting to grow that and how you qualify success. Have you put much thought into like what you think good parenting is and what success looks like for you as a dad?
Yeah, I've probably put a lot of thought
Yeah,
into
yeah.
it. It's yeah, I think the first thing I would say is, you know, success is different for everybody, you know, and what it is that you find successful, you know, for some, but it is important to know what the goal is. Like you said, just in business, parenting's the same thing. Like, you know, do I want my children to call me when they're older and want to have lunch? You know, do I want them to be contributing members of society and be, you know, nice to people? Um, you know, what I think has evolved and changed is my desires for them have changed. Whereas, like maybe before I had kids, or even when I was, you know, just had kids, it was kind of about success.
Mhm.
I mean, or like the word success was in it. Whereas now, like, I really just want my children to be happy. Like that's, you know, that is it. Like, that is the number one thing. And when they're not happy, you try to figure out ways to, you know, support them, and so that they can, you know, navigate through it. And so it's just about coaching them. I talk about being a coach a lot to your kids, rather than being a, you know, a parent. So yeah, I mean, I think about success a lot and what that looks like. And it's, you know, it's having a very loving, communicative relationship with them, where they feel safe and they feel secure to talk with you. You know, and in the end, like I said, it's, you know, when they're older, they're going to call me up to go out to lunch, or, you know, for me to watch their kids.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to want me around. That's the
barometer of
I think
success.
that's the key. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's, you know, because I see it all the time in too many families where, you know, the younger, let's say adults, and their older parents, they don't care to have them around because the parents are critical, or, you know, the parents, you know, it has argue with their spouse, or like whatever that is, you know. I've been very, very lucky with both my set of parents and my wife's parents to have, you know, loving people around us. So, you know, from that aspect, I've been very, very fortunate. But I can see that happens where there's just some kind of tension, or, you know, there's still stuff from childhood that still comes out, and, you know, you don't want it around. And I even going through my course, when I was initially starting, and a couple of the guys even, you know, it was talking about going to their parents' house was one of the worst things.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like, they didn't want to bring their kids over there.
Yeah.
And I would never want my kids to feel that way, you know. Now, at the same time, that's not trying to be like their best friend and spoiling them and everything else, but just having that sort of loving, you know, really good relationship with them. And, you know, hopefully we're on the way to that.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's a really good barometer of success. And I think that it's actually very, very clever and very specific. And I think that it's a really good thing to strive for. I love how like in tune you are with like all these things that I think most dads don't talk about, but they like feel. But then when you say it, it's like, oh yeah, I totally have that sentiment. Yeah, exactly. You're like really.
Well, my mother was like that with relationships. You know, I mean, she made things simple, like, and everything she wrote and spoke about was like, well, of
That's
course, you know, like, yeah, like, no, duh, but we don't practice it, and we don't, you know, we don't do the things that we need to do. And so that's where you know, the action, I can talk all day long, but it's really about the action.
Yeah.
Like, what are you actually doing? Entrepreneurs are the same way. Lots of people talk about entrepreneurship. Oh, I'm going to do this, and I've done, or I'm thinking about this. But until you actually do it and take action, and you're in the dirt, like, you're not an entrepreneur, you know. And it's the same thing even with, you know, quote, being a good parent. A lot of people will talk about it, they'll think about it, but like, unless you're actively making that effort, like, you know,
you're not doing it. Yeah.
It's kind of hard.
I love that. I love that you brought it back to entrepreneurship as well too, because it's like so true.
It is,
and it's easy for me to talk about that when I talk about entrepreneurship. It's a lot harder for me to talk about that with parenting, right? But it's actually very, very similar, because it's kind of like a lot of the parallels are similar. Like, right, you have to like go into something that you don't know the outcome of. You have to take a lot of risk. You have to put yourself out there. It's very, very vulnerable position.
You have to prioritize.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, it becomes about our time and where do we want to spend our effort. And, you know, and everyone makes excuses, or people are like, oh, well, you know, I just don't have the time. Well, no, it's not. You do have the time. You just haven't made it a priority.
Yeah.
You know, because you certainly found time to watch Netflix.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's about, you know, what are you making a priority? And if it's not a priority, fine, but don't kid yourself and complain about it. You know, just be honest about it. And, you know, it's
you're like tough love. I love it. You're just like a straight shooter. You're calling people out. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I hear a lot of BS.
Right.
You know, and here's the thing: is I think in most cases the BS, though, they don't even know that it's BS. Like, you know, when you're not aware, you know, you don't know that or understand that you're complaining about something that is easily fixable.
Yeah.
You know, and I can thank my wife for that. You know, I'm a recovering complainer, and you know, my wife was the one who, because she was a nurse, and she would be like, and even if I got hurt or if she's like, okay, wait, So can we do something
Yeah.
about it? Like, stop complaining about your foot, put some ice on it, and don't walk
deal
on
with
it.
it. Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, like, and so I think she was very instrumental in helping me understand, like, to take action about something instead of complaining
Wow.
about
I love that. I love
you
that
know?
your nurse wife was the performance coach that you needed to like.
Oh, because she doesn't complain
That's
about anything.
amazing.
So it's she either takes the action or doesn't say it. So,
Wow. Maybe she should start a
yeah.
business. That sounds like she has the right mindset.
I said that she should. She could easily be a performance or motivational person, but she doesn't have an interest
Oh
in
man,
that.
that's
So,
awesome. That's actually even more awesome that she's so good at it and she has no interest in it. That's actually really great. Sounds
yeah.
good. Well, Jason, let me switch gears a little bit, and I want to ask, make sure I ask all my guests the same question, so there's some symmetry to these conversations. But let me jump in here. So, what advice do you have for other parents and soon-to-be parents?
Well, I mean, if I have to just give one
Yeah.
or something quick, I can do that. I think one of the topics that comes up always for me is empathy.
Nice.
And I didn't know what empathy was until I really, when I got married, I started to understand it. And then it wasn't until I had kids that I really understood it. And it's really putting yourself in the other person's place and looking at it from their perspective and also feeling what they're feeling. And so, that goes, the story I often will tell is, your 4-year-old can't find their shoes and they are devastated that they can't find their shoes. Well, to us, we're like, just find another pair of shoes. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But for the 4-year-old, it is a big deal. Like, it's devastating that they have favorite pair of shoes and they can't find it. So learning empathy and putting yourself in the place of the 4-year-old or putting yourself in the place of your spouse, you don't have to agree with what is going on. But at least looking at it and saying, well, I can see how they are upset, or I can see how it's affecting them in that way. And since I've done that, relationships completely change. I mean, with friends and family and everything, just being empathetic is like the most important relational tool that I can use.
Really great advice. I mean, I have this, I'm not by any means good at it, but I do have this thing. I think it's very similar. It's very similar to what you're saying. It's like, it's not that it's not important. It's important to me because it's important to you. Right. So that's kind of the mentality. It's like, yeah, my values and mindset are very different than yours, but because you're important to me, I'm going to treat it as important because it seems like it's important to you.
Yeah. I mean, think about how many times we do it with our spouse or our kids or whatever. We're like, they get upset at something. You're like, hey, it's not that big of a deal. Like, don't worry about it. And, we minimize their emotion and instead saying, you know what? I'm sorry that you're going through that or that that's really affecting. Like, I don't have to agree with it. I don't think it's a big deal. But you're not saying that, but you are saying that when you minimize it. And then instead just, and that's happened a lot with just interacting with people. Like,
yeah, it's very sage advice. Yeah, I love it. If you can go back and tell yourself one thing before having kids, what would you go back and tell yourself?
Be more empathetic.
That's awesome. That's a perfect answer.
Actually, well, yeah, that's one. But I might also say, I just learned this from Mel Robbins, the speaker. I said, what if it all works out? A lot of anxiety. I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry. And she had this phrase, what if it all works out?
That's a really great way of looking at it. Oh, that's brilliant.
I wish I thought of that, but it was hers.
Because you're going to constantly, you can constantly sit there and scrape all the different recesses of your brain about why things couldn't work. But you could also flip that exact same paradigm to find all the ways that it could work. It's awesome. Yeah. Very, very settling. I like that. What's the most surprising thing that you learned about yourself after becoming a parent?
Not being perfect is okay. I think I grew up with this notion of like having to be perfect in so many ways, of like trying to be the perfect son. I mean, I had a lot of anxiety in my 20s because, I had to be successful. I had to be a great, son. I had to be a great brother. I had to be all these great boyfriend. And as a result of all of that, there was so much pressure that I was putting on myself. And then I was looking at it, I've done obviously a lot of analysis of like, why was I thinking that, like, what, because people would like me more, because I would then be, make more money. Like, so I had to like go through all of that. And I think making mistakes is okay, and that none of us are perfect. We never are going to be, you learn from them. So I think if I could tell myself that, it was kind of like, hey, stop trying to be, quote, perfect in a way, because when you're not, you're so devastated by it. And instead of just saying, okay, like I made a mistake, let's move on, and that's what I'm trying to teach to my kids, in the sense that like mistakes are okay, and that starts like from a spilled milk. Like you don't yell at your kid, you say, okay, hey, let's clean that up. Let's see what could we have done differently. And you learn from it.
Do you feel like that pressure was expectation and pressure was kind of like self-inflicted because of the
Of course.
got it?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I would just
Yeah, no, I'm in an environment, I look back at it because, because my mother was successful and stuff, I was thinking, okay, well, did my parents put this pressure on me? And like, but no, it all comes from within. And unfortunately, I have seen it in my own children where, feeling this pressure to do well, but meanwhile, like, that's not coming from me.
you have no expectations.
Like,
You just want them to be
we
happy.
say nothing. Like even my kids'
Yeah.
grades, I say nothing about their grades. I don't, if they tell me that they get a grade, I'm like, well, so how did you feel about that? Like, I don't praise, I don't get negative, I don't, nothing. It's not about me. I said, how do you feel? Are you happy with that? Is that something you want to work on? Or are you happy? Is that, but yet there's this internal pressure about it. So like, I had to look at that as well for myself and say, well, it could be just DNA.
Yeah.
Like,
Nature versus nurture, and some things are nature. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I try real hard for some of the areas where I had anxiety. I try real hard to switch it up for my children so that they don't have to go through that. Maybe they
and I'm a little bit like taking a mental note here. Not little. I'm actually taking a mental note here because I like that idea about the grades and saying, well, how do you feel about that? That's actually really interesting, because then you're really just you're just being a guide. You're not actually the authoritarian. You're not the decision maker. Their happiness isn't predicated on what I think. It's actually like, hey, let's figure out what happiness looks like for you based on this.
I have a lot of discussion about that in videos and courses and stuff. I mean, that's a whole podcast in itself about saying the words like I'm proud of you. Like, no, I mean, they want to know obviously that you love them, but your love's unconditional to them. Like, I don't care whether my children get an A or a D. It has nothing to do with how I love them. Now, will that affect what they're able to do? Well, but that's affecting them. That's not a reflection of me in that sense that, I can't believe you did this. And I'm so disappointed in you. And like, that's just not how I want to raise my children. And so for them, it's about what is it that they want? Like, what do you want? Like, I say this with the caveat that both of my children are doing well. They are, nice kids. They're doing well in school. They, for the most part, it's like, so I don't know, if they were doing horribly, would I be as, open to that? I'd like to think that I would, but they've done things where like they play a sport and they're just really not that astute at it. And it's like, okay, well, that's not your thing. Do you want to keep playing or do you want to try something different? Like, instead of like, you need to practice every day and you need to get, like, it's just not, I mean, my job is to be their coach, not their, not their boss.
Oh man, I love that. It's like completely turning everything around for me. I'm gonna have to go check out that podcast that you said you're going to do a podcast, or you already have content for it?
No, I've done a lot on sort of expectations and don't say that you're proud, and the external behavior and the external praise. I mean, it's what social media has caused so much chaos. Is like
the validation needing
a 13-year-old. I mean, a 13-year-old who has repeatedly been told that they're beautiful and wonderful and all the external things, and then all of a sudden posts something and doesn't get any feedback from it and is devastated or gets negative comments. Like, there's zero resilience. And so there's a lot of issues with all that.
It's wild. So do you have an all-time favorite book or business book? It's usually a business book, but in your case, I'm kind of like alluding to any kind of book, because I feel like you're really focused on kind of a lot of different things right now.
I'll have to say my mother's, but hers was Light Her Fire. That was her
called
book.
Light Her Fire.
Light Her Fire is for the men, and then she wrote the one for the women called Light His Fire, and tons of gems in there. I mean, just as far as their interpersonal relationships and Some of it is a little outdated, obviously, because it was written some time ago. There's some technological
Yeah.
differences, but for the most part, fundamentally, it's just
Yeah.
nuggets.
I can't wait to check
full
it
of
out. I'm
nuggets,
definitely going to read that. That's awesome. And then when you're not building out this community for dads and being a super dad yourself, what does Jason do for fun? What do you do for your downtime?
Lots of exercise. I'm a weightlifter as well as yoga as kind of my two hot yoga is kind of my two things that I do. Although I am in the middle of training for something right now, which I don't know how much I can go into. Well, I mean, I can go into it, but it's basically an event where some friends and I get together and we do quite the day. It's called the Day of Madness. We surf in the morning. We then do the half marathon. We then go skiing and then play 18 holes of golf. And then last time we also went bowling, and that's all within a day.
How is that even possible?
Because we live in Southern California, so we're able to surf, drive 2 hours, go to ski. It's quite a coordination effort, and we've done it twice already, and this is the third one coming up. I'm going to knock on some wood to stay healthy, but I'm running right now, and I don't enjoy running. And so,
wait, so are you starting at like 4 a.m. and then ending at like
5? Yeah, you start at like 5 a.m. We do we surf where the surf is right next to where the half marathon starts. So we actually surf. Yeah, we get out, change. We have some area that we're it's a logistic amazement. Like I actually had it documented the last time we did it. It's on my personal channel, which nobody knows of. But I can send it to you. Yeah, we have a whole video.
That's your channel just for family and friends, right? Like that's the one that's like.
Yeah, what happened? Well, a lot of people have like come around wanting to do it, but what happens is we start out with a little bit more than we think, and then we're older guys now. We're all dads and like in our 40s, and so and even older, a few of them, and the body starts wearing. The body doesn't last. I do cryotherapy and leg compression, and I do that on So I do some other things to try to heal myself, but so I'm really into diet, fitness, exercise.
Nice.
That's probably my thing.
Sounds like you're really into it, actually. So, you may want to even start a whole other thing for that, like Dad University Fitness, and diet,
Yeah, there's some guys doing a great job with that. I don't know that I would go into that. I kind of I do more of the mental aspect. But I mean, for me, it's definitely a huge asset that I have of staying healthy, being able to do. I just recently kicked caffeine too. I have just a small amount in the which is, I don't know if you're familiar with mud water.
I get their ads a lot. They're promoting like crazy. Yeah,
they're doing a great job. It's a great product, I will say. So I just do the mud water in the morning, which is an alternative. But I was taking a lot of caffeine for a long time, and I'm off of it. So having a good diet, exercising, and sort of taking care of yourself, it's how I have the energy to be doing this. And staying, I've had multiple assistants who are, half my age who are like, how do you work so hard? How do you keep doing this at this pace? And I mean, to me, that's what it is. It's taking care of myself.
Balancing it out with the mental health, the physical health. And
I won't talk about my knee hurting and my foot hurting and everything.
Well, I've noticed that too. And now it's not even about like repairing things. It's just like maintaining what I have, it's just like constant maintenance, like you're just losing.
Well, even like with weight, I don't lift like the heavy like I used to, and now doing yoga is so much better, and I meditate and such, and so, I'm into the little bit of a maintenance.
Yeah, you're just protecting what you have at this point. I mean, for me, anyways, it sounds like you're still growing and building, but I'm definitely like I can definitely feel the change after I turn 40. I'm like, oh, I'm not getting much stronger. Like I just need to like keep what I have. It's just.
Yeah, and also, I mean, and we didn't talk about too, but it's also, the other things in life that people do. I mean, it's, alcohol, drugs, and stuff, and I've been able to kind of stay away from the majority of that. I drank on occasion, and now it's a rare occasion that I will have alcohol, and that's a big part of it too. It's, for me, I don't know if it's for everybody, but I realize that it doesn't help with anxiety and depression. People think that it does and it helps mask it, but it actually just makes it worse. And so, I was a weekend warrior, hey, we're having drinks and do it. And I just realized like that was bringing me down
Yeah.
too, So for some people that they're great and it's
Yeah.
fine, it's their thing. But I found for me, it definitely affected my emotional state.
Man, you're so like thoughtful about your status, like your state of mind and your state of body. Like you're very introspective, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, I do. I can be self-critical about it too. As much as, I concentrate on all these things, I think you also have to be able to enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
You have to be able to relax a little bit. And sometimes that's difficult for me. I can be honest. It's, feeling like you're constantly having to go and do and
Yeah.
accomplish. And that's some of the problems that I had where I'm trying to do less of that and do that. So yeah, I mean, it's great. But oftentimes it looks so much better on paper than in reality. We could have that conversation too. I stress out, I get anxious, I, get down. I'd say the difference now is I get over it quicker. Having the tools, mental, physical, spiritual sort of things, I can get through those things faster, but I still experience them. That's maybe the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go check out your Dad University because like almost everything you said today is like literally speaking to me at the core. Like I feel like you're talking about things that I've felt and I've known, but I just like have never taken the time to actually like speak out loud or articulate. It sounds like really silly to say that.
That's not silly at all. I think that's the whole purpose of what I do is I think as men, we don't talk about it. We may think a little bit about it, but we also have to make it acceptable, and it's the same thing with like how they've made mental health, like having a mental health issue is now accepted. It's like, get
That's
help.
right.
Let's see what we can do. And, parenting's not easy. It's like, I stress, I get anxious, I get angry, I get, so how do we talk about these things so that we can do them better or avoid the pain that comes with them? And so, I think part of it is just recognizing that. And I think I was just fortunate. I wish I would have known earlier in life about all this stuff. But I just, I make effort, that's maybe the thing. It's, I make effort and, try to help people along the way.
It's a noble cause and a noble mission. I hope that I can help in my small way of helping you in your cause. Yeah.
Yeah, you are for sure. No, the podcast is great. It's, that kind of input and talking with other dads and such. It's great. I mean, I think we need more of that. We need more of it in the community. We need more of it, at the greater community
Awesome.
as well. So.
Well, with that, Jason, I'm gonna bid you well here. Thank you so much for being on my show. It was a wonderful conversation, and I can't wait to stay in touch and check out the Dad University as well. Thank you again.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It was good.
Yeah, it was great. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Girl Dad Show. We really hope you enjoyed that interview, and as always, please take a moment to review, rate, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.